Hello and welcome to another video from MicroRooster. The topic of today would be data mining and predictive analysis using MicroStrategy. Now, I understand that this topic is a very advanced topic. It requires a lot of knowledge of what you're doing and how you're implementing a data mining model or a predictive analysis model. However, the purpose of this video is to show you how to use MicroStrategy to create a model. This does not mean that you will be creating necessarily the correct model, nor will you be able to know how to evaluate your model. You would need some experience and knowledge in data mining predictive analysis to be able to do this correctly as an analyst, but as a developer that's working with an analyst, this will allow you to create those models requested by your analyst and work with your analyst to create these models. Also, it'll give you some capability of figuring out some unique things and some cool tricks that you can pull for your reports and dashboards with really minimal data mining predictive analysis capabilities. That's the cool thing about these out-of-the-box tools. There's in MicroStrategy, the latest releases, there's two ways to do this. One, you can use their out-of-the-box data mining predictive analysis wizards, and the other one is the integrated R, which means if you know R, you're familiar with R, which is an open source tool, you can create your own scripts and use that type of functionality embedded in your metrics. So you can create R integration metrics, or you can simply import a PMML. If you're using SPSS, SAS, etc., you're using all that, you're creating these models, you can import a PMML model into a MicroStrategy metric or a predictive metric and then use it in your reports. However, we're not going to go through the external ones or the R integration. Those you can do them on your own using the metric editor or exporting and importing an object, but we're going to focus on the out-of-the-box predictive analysis. I will probably create another tutorial later on that will go into more detail about the different models and how to use them more from a statistics marketing perspective, but this one is just the how to get it done. Okay, so one of the things that I was looking at is trying to figure out what's a good data set. Remember, data set is the most important part about creating a predictive analysis model. If it doesn't make sense, then it doesn't make sense and your prediction is garbage. So let's focus first on creating the perfect report. Not the perfect report necessarily, but a good report that allows us to do some prediction and make sense when you make the prediction. Okay? I created a report, or let's create a report together. I basically created a report that we can use later on to view, but a better practice would be creating it ourselves. I'm using the MicroStrategy tutorial, and I found a good report that I want to analyze, and this is in a subject area I believe called customer analysis. So I was looking at these different things. I was looking, okay, they're evaluating customers by income. They're trying to evaluate the summary of the customers or capture the summary of customer behavior or the performance. But I was thinking, can I do something even simpler and create a report from scratch that allows me to predict some revenue metrics? So first thing, I'm going to create my report from blank. Now again, I'm using the MicroStrategy tutorial because it's got some good data sets or data available for me. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for some good attributes. See, I'm looking for customers. I want to do some prediction on customer behavior. Let's do something where we grab some variables that we want to use to predict a behavior. So I'm going to let's grab customer age, and let's grab age. Let's grab his gender. Okay, got age, gender, Let's grab, see, do they have marital status? Yeah, and the marital status. So I'm looking at the age, I'm looking at the sex or the gender of the customer, and I'm looking whether single or married or divorced, etc. Now, these are good attributes, but what we really need to predict is a value in this case. You can also do a prediction on categorical values, like you can predict the age or the gender or status based on some different combination of attributes and metrics. But let's look for a metric that will fit into this model. Let's look at the customer analysis metric. Let's do a transaction per customer. So here we go. We have age, we have customer gender, we have marital status, then we have transactions per customer. Okay. Let's add a time dimension. It's very critical that you always add time dimensions, otherwise your predictions become a bundle of timeless metrics. So you want to keep that in mind when you do something. You might not if you're doing clustering, for instance, but if you're doing something like predictive analysis with time dimension being part of your system or your transactions, you want to be able to capture it. You want to also be able to filter and prompt your users before creating these predictive models. So I'm going to grab year and I'm going to put it in the cube. I just don't want it necessarily to show up here, and I want to filter by year, so I'm dragging it up here as well, and I'm going to keep that prompted. Let's see if I can move this here. So I want to keep that prompted. I want the user to be able to select a year. Okay, so I created a prompt on the year. So here we go, simple report. Let me save it as, and I'm going to call it transaction per customer predictive prediction. Okay, report. Very simple. So first thing is first, let's run the report and make sure there's data. Run the report. If you don't have data, you can't do a prediction. Remember, predictive analytics is based on your historical data. So let's run this for 2008, and then what we could do is use the result of our prediction to compare it to the results in 2009. Remember, this is demo data, so our predictions might be off, but it's just a good exercise at least. Okay, so 2008, and let's go move this up a little. There we go. So 2008, and again I'm having to resize this because my window is smaller. Alright, so 2008 and finish. See what happens. Okay, so we got a lot of data here. We got age, gender, marital status, and the transaction per customer. Let's reorganize things. Let me shift the gender here. So we'll have two buckets, male and female, age, gender, and here's the transaction per customer. So this is the account of transactions for single people, age 23, and with either a male or a female gender. In this case, the male is the first category. Okay, so here we go. We got this information, and let's create a prediction metric. It's called, under insert, you want to go to new training metric. Now you could also build these metrics outside a report, but a good practice is build them inside the report, inside your test environment, while you're creating your report and testing it together. Then you can save your metric outside the report or keep it within a report. Okay, but let's just go with new training metric. The wizard will pop up. You have options from out of the box like linear regression, exponential regression, logistic, etc., decision, time, association. you can read about each one of them or Google them and look at Wikipedia if you want to get a high level, or you can get some statistics or marketing book to go into more detail about what each one of these does. But high level linear regression is trying to find the best fit, a simple, straightforward best fit based on ordinary least squares, the most common kind of predictive analysis. And then you get into more exponential. If it's not a straight line, you're doing exponential, and you're doing logistic. If you're doing categorical, like you're trying to predict, for example, the gender, there's male, female, or you can do some clustering if you're trying to group categories of things. Decision tree, trying to also figure out the outcome of a process like an election, for instance. Time series, where time is the dependent factor. And then association, where you're trying to bundle things up together and see what goes with what product sells with what other product, for instance. Okay, but let's go with the linear regression next. First thing is, it'll try to fit your model. It's saying, okay, I'm going to use your gender, use the age to predict transaction per customer. Let's also bring in marital status. So you just click here, an arrow. So these are the 3 items that the model will use to predict your transaction per customer, okay, based on the data we already have, which was for 2008. You could also segment things. You can put a year here and say, okay, break it down by year, but because we have a year prompt in this case, it's irrelevant. But you could do that if you had a month here. You can say, okay, I want the prediction to be broken down at a month level, for instance, or a quarter or a season level. So you could do that kind of segmentation. You can show advanced options. I'm just going to show you what they are. In this case, you have single pass forward and backward, and variable settings. You have tons of choices. You have to know what you're doing before you play with any of these. But this is saying, okay, is this what kind of data is it? Is it categorical, continuous, or ordinal? And if you don't know, it'll go to default, which is based on the definition of this attribute. For instance, if this was a number, or if it was in this case it was a number, it probably will be categorical or continuous. Age is categorical. If you want to specify, you can go here and choose it. If you're not sure, just keep it at default. There's all these different outlier information ranges, transformation. Do you want your value used as is, or do you want to transform the value using one of these mathematical formulas before you use it for your prediction? You don't know what you're doing, don't mess with this. If you know what you're doing, go ahead and add or modify anything you want for any of these items, okay? So I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm going to keep it single pass. Next, it's saying, okay, what do you want to name this guy? Predictive metric base name, okay? And where do you want to save it? And in the report objects, but I can also save it outside as an independent by choosing a location. I'm just going to keep it report objects for simplicity, but if you wanted to make it an external metric and reuse it in other reports, you can save it to a certain destination. You want to include the statistical analysis with the model. Always keep that checked, because what you're trying to say is somebody else is coming to use this and they want to see what you did. They can see that information, it will be captured. And then your predicted value, here's the name that they're using by default. You could name it whatever you want, my prediction, for example. And if you want to add the probability, which is adding a layer to your predicted value, saying the probability of the correctness, and use as an aggregation sum, you can use that or not. Let's just skip it for now, but feel free to play with it and see what it does for you. Next, I'm done, saying you're just ready to go, and look what happens now. There you go. It created my prediction, this new metric. So it's saying, okay, this is 2008 data, and this is how my model predicted it based on 2000. Obviously, this value and this value are not going to be the same, because this value used to create the algorithm, and then the algorithm was used to run the values, the data, against these different categories. So there's a mismatch for several reasons. One reason would be this is test data. Another reason would be these are not enough categories to predict transactions per customer, you might need city, you might need zip code, you might need income. There's a lot of more factors. These are just very generic factors, hard to predict a value like this just on base these three, but still, it's good enough for our purpose and it's showing us what we're trying to do. So here we go, we created this first predictive metrics. So now how do we use it? Okay, let me save this and close. Okay, so I'm save it and keep it prompted because we want to change the year. Remember, this was for 2008. So here's where it becomes very cool. Now I'm going to run this report again. But now instead of choosing 2008, which was used to build the model, remember this is critical, 2008 was used to build that model. 2009 was not. So let's see, let's assume 2009 was from the future, okay? And we were trying to predict it. But we know that we have data for 2000, so it allows us to compare. Okay, next. Great. So here we go. And finish. See what happens. Alright, so here's our 2009 actual data. Okay, actual data. And this is what our prediction was predicting based on these values and the transaction in 2008. Remember, that was based on 2008. So let's see. The next step is, was my prediction good enough? You can look at the model itself and you can see and you can evaluate the model. So you can go here and right click and you can view the predictive model. And if you know what you're doing, you can get all this information and it'll tell you the R squared and all the different coefficients, and there's the F statistic, the degrees of freedom, etc. There's all this information that's captured about the model. Here's the PMML if you want to export it and send it to a different tool like SAS, etc. There's verification values. If you don't know what you're doing here, that's okay. But if you do know what you're doing here, this is cool information out of the box, okay? So let me just close this. Go back to our report. For a simple user like you, now the next step would be like telling the user, okay, how good was your prediction or how off were you? So let's add a general metric, a derived metric, and I'm just going to compare the values. So I'm going to say, take my prediction and subtract from it the actual value, and I'm divide that by the actual value just to get an idea of how off was my value. Let's convert this and format it into a percentage. Okay, and it's negative because my formula was reversed. I can edit that and say, instead of taking this guy, okay, let me subtract the reverse and my prediction. Okay, there we go, and I'm rename my metric. Oops, I have to edit it to rename it. Okay, just rename it to difference percent, so it makes sense. Here we see like the difference between what the actual and the predicted. Obviously some of our predictions are really off or not accurate, at least because this is data, this is tutorial data, it's not actual data, and our factors are gender, age, marital status, which is very limited. You need more information than that to be able to predict a transaction per customer. So, but this is, showing you how it's done. You could also add some threshold if you want your user to see, oh yeah, so here's my field, and I'm saying if my difference is less than this type of high value, since our data, remember it's percent, so 0.30 is 30%. And it didn't work. Let's see, what did I do wrong? Oh, I didn't change it. So let's do the font and make that a green font. Okay. So there we go. Obviously you can't see the green from black, so maybe add one more layer to our threshold, and let's say black background or white background. Let's see, solid. Let's give it green, looks good on yellow, let's say. Okay, there we go. So that's everything that's within, let's say, our 30% boundary, and all the different things that are outside that were not highlighted. This is just one way to start creating these analysis on top of your predictive value or predictive metrics. Okay, so as you saw, we started with 2008 data, we created a report, we predicted based on 2008, then we ran it for 2009, we compared it to 2009 data, and we were able to analyze how good and bad our prediction was. This is all out of the box. You didn't need to know statistics, you didn't need to know anything about customer analysis, and you were able to create a simple report using MicroStrategy. And hopefully you will learn about these different predictive tools and data mining tools before using this, and use this to augment your analysis and improve the quality of reports or graphs or statistics that you're trying to provide your users with. Okay? Thank you very much, and look forward for another one in the future where we talk more detail about these data mining tools. Thank you very much.